Thank you very much, and hello everybody. So I'm your host for this panel, Kalam, Neale, and to introduce you to the panel, we're going to be talking specifically around the academic developments of this qualification, and then also some first-hand examples of delivery. First of all, I'd like to introduce you to Laura Hall. Laura is the product manager, and digital product owner for business, enterprise, esports, marketing, and law at Pearson. And then we've also got Jin as well, who you met earlier, who's the head of esports and course leader at Confetti Institute of Creative Technologies. So we'll kick right off, and we'll get straight into the panel, and we'll start with yourself, Laura. Just in terms of breaking this down and stripping it right back to the basics and where it started, can you tell us a little bit more about what this qualification actually is and what do they cover? Why were they developed in the first place?
Yeah, hi everybody. Can you hear me? Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks for having me on. So about 4 years ago, I think it was, Tom and Chester approached Pearson about esports. And we're interested in developing a qualification. And at the time, and still currently, I'm in charge of all the business portfolio. And it landed on my desk, email, and I was intrigued because I've run a sports department for 14 years before joining Pearson. And I thought, okay, what's this esports? I'm not a gamer. I've never actually played a game in my life. Don't shoot me. But we met and I got it. I got that whole engagement, attendance, retention, improvement, and the whole other skills that are similar to sport and aligned to that whole thing. So I also, you'd be interested to know, had a very long internal battle. Not necessarily negative, but just because people didn't understand, like I didn't, what esports was about. And Tom and Chester pulled me through a rapid journey of understanding, and I took Pearson through that as well. And I'm having, done a BTEC and delivered a BTEC for so many years, I understood BTEC and how BTEC would be able to use esports to support a lot of different agendas, if you want to call it that, for learning and progression, being at the heart of the passion of BTEC, and what skills that esports will bring to learners to be able to move forward. So we started with the BTEC Nationals in Level 3, and because there is, or was, and still is actually, a ban, for want of a better word, on developing qualifications to go on performance measures, we had to take a different approach. So we, as a self-regulating awarding organisation, we were able to actually design, with the help of British Esports and yourself, of course, Kalam, and some other teachers as well, who we brought on, specialists. We were able to design the BTEC Nationals, but it's not on performance measures, and therefore it did give us some scope for being a bit more flexible about the approach. So for those who are actually delivering it, you will know that there are no external assessments, which is something that the government, when putting stuff on performance measures, is critical. And we believe that was an advantage, not only for the learners who may want to take it, but also for the nature of esports, because actually it lends itself to project-based assessment and mixing and matching the skills across the different projects and sectors, if you want to call it that. So we have 4 different sizes of the BTEC Nationals, from the 360 extended certificate, which is equivalent to 1 A-level, all the way through up to the extended diploma, which is equivalent to 3 A-levels. Because they are BTEC Nationals, they do hold the same UCAS points as all other BTEC Nationals. And the coverage, the level 2 follows quickly behind in development, and a battle with Ofqual to fund it meant a little bit later in the calendar year for people to take on board. But in actual fact, is a great qualification, comes in 3 sizes, from 1 GCSE equivalent at 120 GLH award up to 3 GCSE equivalents. And that is now also available for pre-16 funding, which initially it was just post-16. So that's what we've got available at the moment, but we've also put together, with the help of Gary from British Esports, a level 1 brochure, prospectus, whatever you want to call it. But what we've done is we've taken the level 1 vocational study units and that are most aligned to esports and put together where you might want to, so for example, branding, you might want to deliver the branding unit. It might have a slightly different title, but if you want to deliver the branding unit at level 1, you might choose to do it through esports. And we've also put together how that will be able to be packaged together, so you could literally deliver your whole level 1 vocational studies as an esports qualification, even though it doesn't have that in the certificate. And so, so we've got a whole range from level 1 to level 3 available for centres to, look at progression of students, etc., and engage with the right people at the right time.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And I've already spoken to a few delegates that are here today, and we've got a variety of people attending today from a variety of backgrounds, from schools, from further education, higher education, and I think that's the beauty of the nature of esports, that these qualifications that have been developed, they truly are cross-curricular, and if you've looked at the specifications and the units, you'll really see that cross-curricular nature of business elements, creative media, links to STEM careers, links to sporting careers. As we now know in education, under the new Education Inspection Framework, we're measured under the 3 I's: intent, implementation, and impact. And having just been through an Ofsted inspection ourselves, where we had a deep dive in esports, inspectors were really thorough on that. Do you know your intent? Why are you delivering this program? What can students do at the end of that? How do you actually deliver it? How have you structured it? Why have you got your modules in that order? What do they study first? What do they study second? And I think that's key for anyone who's already delivering, or for people that are out there that are thinking of delivering. Events like this are absolutely fantastic because we can network, we can speak to other people, and luckily we've got access to Jin today as well. And in terms of that, Jin, then coming to yourself, can you tell us a little bit about your intent in terms of how you've developed programs, and crucially, how you've been able to create and develop innovative content for learning across FE, HE, and PG?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. Fundamentally, looking at Confetti as an institute, our focus is creative technologies and production. So immediately, our angle and our intent for that learning trajectory across levels 3 to 7 is to focus the learning opportunities, the vocational practices, the industry briefs, and industry engagement within production. So focusing on how we packaged the BTEC spec for esports. We've just completed our first year, and as the students progress into the second year, they start to focus much more on production, so the video editing side of things, shoutcasting, and learning how to stream. And that trajectory then leads them into the first year of the esports production degree, and it is what it says on the tin. So our focus is, as we have in music production, in games technology, games production, in games art, and in TV and film, etc., it is utilizing the technologies that are prevalent within that industry to then contextualize learning for it, and as a result, the students get a very hands-on practical experience, but the opportunities for their employment after learning and during their learning is what's providing them with a successful and stable future, providing they engage and they bite off the opportunities that we give to them. So that intent for learning was very much set by what we've been doing at Confetti from day one. And specifically with esports, the type of projects that we have. So we're very fortunate. We work with the British Esports, we work with the Neale, we work with NSC, and we work with a number of other organizations outside of directly esports. And our students have been able to feed into those opportunities, have live briefs set, have feedback sessions, pitching to a panel of judges that are within esports, and that has made it a very authentic and organic experience for our students, who, as a result, know what career path they're on and what their end goal is. And that's usually the biggest challenge, isn't it? We say esports, and the students get excited. Oh, we get to play games, and the parents are like, esports, and it's really breaking down those boundaries to be able to get to what actually it is. And I and my team, we see esports as this vehicle for learning all of the interdisciplinary skills that are required to make you successful in that massive, booming, exciting, delicious industry that we're all involved in. So that's really the focus, and it should be relatively clear from essentially the spaces that you are seeing and you're in, and the students that you'll get to engage with and see and hear from also.
And I think that's shone through in previous from previous panelists and speakers this morning. We've spoken a lot about transferable skills and the enjoyment and the fun. Like, we're allowed to have fun in education. Yeah, let's make it fun. Let's enjoy it. And I think somewhere along the way we've lost that a little bit in secondary and further education. So, if you walk into primary school and you ask a question, the hands fly up. And they want to learn. And actually, what this is doing is it's taking us back to that love for something that we're actually studying. What we're talking about here is true vocational learning, preparing people for employment, developing those transferable skills through studying something which we love and which we're passionate about. Jin, just a follow-up question to that, and this is something that we talk about a lot at Pearson. So I also work as a vocational qualifications trainer, supporting any of the new centres or existing centres who are delivering this. And one thing that people are always asking is around the assessment. So we can speak all day about fun teaching and fun learning. Don't forget the assessment. This is a vocational qualification. So, Jin, you've been able to do some combined assessment work and project work. Can you tell us a little bit about that then, around your digital magazine and your reasons for doing that around assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. So me and Kyle, who you heard from just in the previous panel, when putting together the assessment structure for the BTEC, we looked at ways in which, rather than it being very compartmentalized, for this unit you have to do this, and for this unit you have to do this, it's packaging it in a way where the students can resonate with the purpose and the intent, again, for that assessment and for that unit. So the intent for the first year, in the outcome for the first year, is students create a magazine that encompasses all of the different units and the unit assessment. So if we're talking about an introduction into esports, they write a series of articles. If we're talking games design, they come up with some concepts for competitive games, because fundamentally game design, competitive gaming, trying to look at specifically what makes successful competitive games, and to include those in the old style of 90s magazines and gaming magazines, something that we're very much familiar with, but the students should really understand and be able to package their learning in a way that is accessible, and they can be proud of it at the end of it also. So that was the real fundamentals of putting together the first year of learning and packaging the first year of learning in a way that is accessible, exciting, meaningful, and it's also all of those things for us.
Brilliant, thank you. Laura, coming back to yourself, given this cross-curricular nature that we've mentioned and that we're exploring and that these qualifications cover, in terms of beyond the qualification then, what sort of progression and career opportunities are there that are available for students who come onto this pathway?
Yeah, thanks. So many of you may know already that there are degree programmes available for learners, and one of the biggest barriers for students taking BTEC in esports is not knowing what their progression opportunities are. And it's really exciting to see that there are over 32 or 34 degree programmes available this September for students to choose, which do cross over the sectors that we've been mentioning. I know that a lot of centres are focusing on the creative media direction, but there's also the sports element to it, and all of coaching, nutrition, etc. that you talked, psychology that you talked about, and there's also degree programs which focus on the business side of things, so the marketing, media, branding, etc. So there's a whole range of different opportunities for learners in the HE space, and obviously the College of Esports, which is down in the Olympic Park, which is a really exciting place as well as all of the exciting level 4, level 5 progression opportunities within FE centres or centres that are linked to universities that are popping up as well. So it's really, really good from that point of view, further education or higher education. But there's also quite a lot of interest now, and it's just a matter of us collating all of that interest between us and collaborating around the different employers that are starting to acknowledge not just the students with esports skills and what those skills bring to their organisations, but technical skills as well. So there's there are the transferable skills, and I know we talk about that, but we shouldn't underestimate how in demand those strategic thinking, very quick decision making, problem solving skills that some other areas of study develop, but just not in quite the same way as a learner who's done BTEC or done esports, BTEC in esports, or is studying esports. They are really crucial for many businesses and other organisations. So we work with, through you, Kalam, actually, we've started talking to the armed forces, and they really getting on board with those skills and how esports can support their younger employees. Probably not the right term, but they might be all called different things. And we recognise that, and again, Kalam, you've probably got more information on this, but there's a lot of football clubs and sports clubs that are recognising esports and expanding their community programmes, as well as other large sporting organisations, Formula One being one of them. But just the general... If you think about the events management, and I think we just saw a short video before around setting up just literally your own college event, or you might bring primary schools in to do an event in your centre. The things that go on in that organisation and marketing and everything like that, that's a massive skill set that is difficult to actually do very well in a lot of other subjects. And so the skills that they're learning are going to be really important where businesses want to engage in esports, which is what they are doing, and it's growing and growing. So we're in the process of, we understand that there are HE offers, we understand that there are progression into employment, but that is a key area which we are looking to promote, but also to get your input on how that is working. So progression of your students, where are they going, what are their opportunities? So it's a bit of a collective approach to gaining that understanding at the moment, I think.
Thank you. If I may, one of the strategies and thought processes that I had when first designing the esports curriculum here was, if we take games, for example, because my background is teaching games production, 3D modeling, engines, fundamentally the last 10, 15 years, the stigma associated with studying games, it's been there and it still is there a little bit. But if we compare that to the stigma associated with studying esports, it is it has rapidly changed in terms of being accepted much quicker, in terms of what the values are for studying esports. And I say that, I'm sure we're all fully aware of looking at how the sort of the esports education industry has taken a little bit of a battering from some angles of, is it worth studying esports? Is it worth studying at degree level? And these elephant in the room discussions need to be addressed. But fundamentally, there is value, and that's why we're here. And that's why we're doing what we're doing and why there is success in that. So it's to highlight those areas in the best possible way and demonstrate innovations and exciting opportunities that lay and reside within esports, learning from what we've experienced with developing games curriculums, gaming degrees that are focused on animation, 3D modeling, programming, engines, design, all of those fundamentals. So it's a very interesting perspective to see it from, that how fast esports is growing. And I wanted to just answering the second part of the question you asked me earlier, which is to do with the degree provision and postgrad provision, and feeding into some of the things that we've just been discussing now, is one of the most successful ways that we've been able to cultivate that learning and apply that learning is through meaningful assessment that are linked to industry. So I know it seems a little bit obvious, doesn't it? But designing an assessment that feels less like an assessment, but more like a piece of portfolio work that really connects directly with employers in industry, preparing students to become freelancers, for them to understand the way business works and the way they can plug into the economy. And it could be very chalk and talk boring, or it could be, here is an example of students who have made it and are doing it for real, that's our motto, but doing it for real on a regular, because that pathway has been shown to them. So as through our provision, setting the foundations in BTEC, becoming a really effective part of a production team with our degree provision, and our postgrad students, they focus on innovating and developing the emerging technologies that are within esports. So we're looking at cross-reality, virtual production, even virtual reality, augmented reality, developing apps, all of that will feed into the growth of innovation within esports.
I think if we think about a variety of industries, there aren't many industries at the moment that if you're potentially looking at a further education study program and then going on to undergraduate study and beyond, where you can actually contribute to real-world, significant, impactful research. It's a relatively new and developing industry, esports and education. So there's a fantastic opportunity here for students to be the first. And we're creating this pipeline of graduates, alumni, who they have a skill set that they've been developing since some of them were 4 or 5 years old through playing games and playing esports. But some of the students don't know that they have those skills, or they don't recognize that they have resilience, or that they have the ability to think strategically, or that they can communicate or lead or be a part of a team. So that's the first job. But then also we've got that link to employment, where do employers know how talented this next generation are that are coming through our education system, and what knowledge and skills they have? And it's our job to educate the employers on that as well. And I think through this vocational method of learning and the variety of cross-curricular subjects that it studies, we really are arming them. We're building a repertoire, we're building a portfolio where when they go to interview, it's not a case of, I need you to hold my hand. Here's what I've done over the last 2 years and 3 years. And I think that's the nature of what we're seeing now from centres who are delivering this qualification. We're about to see esports thrust into the mainstream even further with the Commonwealth, which I know was mentioned earlier and it'll be discussed later. My point on that is, if you've not seen a live esports event before, book your tickets to go and see esports at the Commonwealth. Take your family, take your kids, take your friends. It's not just about what happens on the PC at the front. It's a whole event, which is totally encompassing. So if you've got any doubters in your centres, ask them to come along for some CPD in August with you and have a bit of fun, because I think that's what CPD should be as well. Jin,
Kalam, if it's all right, just at that point, you've beautifully set an opportunity for me to throw this in. So I had a text just before I did the intro earlier today. But we've officially, this morning, 10 a.m., announced our partnership with the Commonwealth. So Confetti will be supporting the Commonwealth qualifiers and the Commonwealth finals in Birmingham. The qualifiers will be taking place on site at Confetti, and our students will be supporting the production. So amazing, that's given me goosebumps just saying that out loud.
And real-world learning, absolutely amazing opportunity for them, and a real credit to sort of qualify what we're doing here. I'm really proud to say that. So our students getting the opportunity to work in Birmingham on the finals, being part of the production team and setting up and all of that, it is remarkable and very exciting. Thank you. And congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah?
Thank you.
Come on. Jin, when we were discussing this panel over the last few weeks or so, Jin mentioned something that really struck a note with me around not just the program and what they're studying, but also the technology that we're upskilling students with. And some of them probably know more about the technology than we do as educators. we're almost playing catch up with some of the students, and lots of them, as Mark highlighted earlier, they know how to use the equipment. And Jin mentioned this phrase. He said, "Readily available technologies and boundless creativity." Can you tell us a bit more, Jin, about in actually the implementation of your study programs, how you utilize technology and how that provides this boundless creativity?
Absolutely. If we think about a low-end stream, and I say low-end stream, but low-end in terms of technology, it is accessible. Webcam, you've got gaming software, you can load up OBS, and you can stream online to Twitch, to YouTube, and that is a very accessible way to present some level of creativity, in that I'm playing a video game and I want to share that with the world. Changing the angle on that and innovating in that, okay, I want to play, I'll give an example of some of our first years. We want to do a CSGO 1v1 tournament, but the players are blindfolded. And there's someone talking in their ear telling them, aim left, aim right, walk forwards, this, that. Immediately, it's not particularly esports, but the creative element of that and the entertaining element of that is what it's stimulating creative thinking, problem solving, da-da-da. But it's a great way for them to use those technologies that are at their fingertips to create something amazing. So in terms of boundless creativity, it really starts from not, here's some tech, use that and learn how to use it. It's what can you do to entertain, to inform, to excite? What excites you and what entertains you? How can you package that, repackage that, and create something that is going to turn heads and be memorable? That's the vibe. And I think it's very important to be able to do that. One of my colleagues who's here, Ollie Morley, specialist in broadcast tech, we spoke over quite a long duration about the outcomes that the students are getting from studying. And one of the key things that he mentioned, and we resonate heavily on, is if it's not fun, there's a problem. Okay? Yeah, they're going to sit in a production gallery and sweat and stress and be panicking and be like, why aren't you doing this and what's going on? And it's like, okay, dial it back. What are you creating? And is it working? Make it work, all right? Is it fun? Fantastic. It's working. As long as the end result is entertaining and it works, there is success in that, right? So that boundless creativity is measured by so many different things. And I think to once again go to my trajectory of learning, doing that in your first year on the degree course, in your second year really starting to specialize in those roles, and in your third year, very shorthand, and in your third year doing your dissertation project and researching technologies that are used within esports and focusing on how you can use them to elevate the esports broadcast production a broadcast production or the industry, and being able to think about what are those areas that haven't yet been researched enough or haven't been fed into. So if we are to look at research within esports, it's quite scarce. If we look at broadcast, there's lots. If we look at technologies in terms of TV technologies, display technologies, games, so and so, it exists. But specific to esports, there is an opportunity to be the first and to demonstrate that you have really gone into depth on learning about the tech, learning about creativity, and making a place for yourself and a name for yourself within this industry. And finally, the postgrad is to completely focus on that in its entirety. So virtual production technology, cross-reality technology. If you look at any of the big major finals, the Worlds for League of Legends, for example, they're very much the pinnacle of demonstrating cross-reality, where you've got a performance on stage of something in 3D, in cross-reality, augmented reality, and you've got live performance at the same time. So to be able to provide them with the technology to do that, number one, is value added to the learning experience, and to face it, the 10 grand that they spend a year at university, having that at their fingertips, and then packaging that so that they have tangible opportunities when they finish to be standing out from the crowd, okay? Those of you who know esports industry and working in production, it's a very young industry. There's a lot of even younger than 20 years of age working within production and working within talent. And I think to stand out from that and to elevate beyond that it's technology driven. So being able to be a specialist in virtual production, being able to be a specialist in a workflow within a production gallery, and to really tighten it up and be really refined in what you are delivering. I think that is what will really set apart students studying esports and enthusiasts.
Yeah, and thinking about our learning spaces that we're creating, and we've mentioned this before. I'm very fortunate that we've been on a 3-year journey, and I'll share a bit more of that journey with you later. But we're by all means not saying to anyone that in order to deliver this qualification, you need thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds of investment at further education. This is about what technology do you have available. If your IT teams are redeveloping a suite, can we add to that? And actually, can we use lots of the free software that's out there that exists, that Jin's mentioned some of that earlier, to utilise technology as the method to engage students? And as educators, we've been battling that for years, thinking about that lesson plan. What am I going to do with that group next week? They're really difficult, or I just can't get them to engage in my subject. Well, I've not really experienced that in esports over the last 3 years. It's almost I can get out of the way and just let them do it and be there as that facilitator and support mechanism. And lots of other people that I've spoken to have expressed concern around, I don't know everything about the esports industry. Well, I think in reality, nobody does. It's huge. How can you possibly know every single thing about the esports industry? It's massive. But I tell you who does know about it, the students. So let's empower them to bring their knowledge forwards, and then we can create learning environments and utilize technology creatively to actually support them. And therefore, we've seen lots of growth in this area over the last few years. And Laura, this is where I'm just going to come back to yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about that from a Pearson perspective around from where this started to where we are now? How has this grown in terms of the students, the centres, the people that are getting on board, and what do you predict in terms of what's going to happen next?
Yeah, thanks. So, I think it was mentioned before, so I'm probably repeating slightly, but this is our second full year finishing now of the BTEC Nationals and the Level 2, actually. Although, as I said, Level 2 is a bit of a slower starter because of the funding. But the Level 3, we had around 200, just over 200 learners in our first year. And this year, we're around 2,000 learners, and our projections are up to around 6,000 learners next year. We have about, I think it's 160 approved centres to deliver BTEC. Level 2 is a little bit lower than that. Level 3 seems to be the starting point, which I find quite surprising, actually. If I was testing my toe in the water, I might be doing it at Level 2. But Level 3 maybe is what people want. And it offers, like we've just talked about, so much diverse opportunity, and the word entrepreneurship and enterprise hasn't really been said. And I think what you're talking about is really a combination of the creative, the technology, and the entrepreneurship. And that's what this qualification at Level 3 and Level 2 does actually bring through, because those units and projects that you can put towards those units combine all of those things. Just digressing slightly, the independent sector are leading on understanding how those three areas and esports can support academic learners who, in some cases or in many cases, lack those opportunities or skills because the academic programs don't make those available to them. So esports can be taken, of course, in its full glory at 3 A-level equivalent extended diploma, and that's one of our bigger sizes, in fact. But it's also a brilliant qualification at 1 A-level size to combine as a study programme, and that's also quite growing. The problem with the performance measures at schools is one of the issues there. But if you're not in that, if you have a school which is forward-thinking, that's probably a bit of unfair comment, sorry. So if you have a school which allows you to use all of the other things that we've talked about around engagement, motivation, attendance, retention, etc., to have esports in your sixth form, then that we are seeing that growth, because there is an ability to match that with, say, for example, an A-level in graphic design or an A-level in or a BTEC in creative media, etc. So there are mixes and matches. So esports doesn't have to be their full study programme. So that's where we're seeing quite a bit of growth as well.
Brilliant, thank you. And that flexible nature, when I've spoken to colleagues at other centres, is what people really love, is that they can design the programme in the way that they want. And everyone will be different. For some people, this will live in their digital area. For some people, it will live as part of business. So for some, it'll be game. For some, it'll be sport. For some, it'll be across all three or all four of those areas. And that's really the start point for anyone who's thinking of delivering, is considering that cross-curricular nature and the subjects and the backgrounds. How are we going to teach this thing? You know, who are we going to get on board? Where can we draw on certain levels of staff expertise to be able to deliver this? And where can we get advice from? You know, there's some great knowledge in the room today and people who are already delivering. And then another good resource that I'm going to try and plug a little bit if I can is I also host the Pearson Esports podcast. If anyone's not listened to that, not because of me, because of the guests that are on it, it's a great resource because we get that first-hand insight. And that's what I'd recommend, really, is if you're thinking of starting this thing, do exactly what we're doing today. Network, speak to people over lunch, get onto LinkedIn and add people. And as an esports education community, I've found that really, really supportive. Episode 1 is all about how to generate funding and how to set up facilities with James Fraser-Murison down in Queen Mary's. Episode 2 is with Gary Tibbett from British Esports, and we discuss lots of things around the Commonwealth, around how to teach this qualification, around the students that are coming through, around careers that are available. And then finally, episode 3 that's just gone live now on Spotify is with Stephen English, who is the head of esports at Williams Formula One. And from a real employer's perspective around, here's what I expect from people who are going through this qualification if they want to come and work in our industry. And the advice that he gives to student is a really powerful tool. So I would say go and check that out. Anyway, the reason I mentioned that is we always finish the podcast on 3 top tips. So that's what we're going to try and do for you here today. We're going to try and give you our 3 top tips for anyone who's thinking of delivering this qualification, for people out there that are already delivering. So, Jin, we'll come to yourself first. If there's anyone specifically who's thinking of moving into this qualification now, considering your journey and what we discussed earlier around planning, and we've discussed in the past that you had almost like a 3 to 5 year vision and beyond, what would your advice be? Big question.
It is definitely a big question. I mean, I'm going to sidestep slightly and answer with something that I've heard from every guest that we've had for Industry Week, every person that we've spoken to from an organisation in and around esports. That advice that we've been telling the students and they've been telling the students is to be a good person. And the reason, I think it sounds very cheesy, but the esports industry is so small. Everybody knows everybody. And to be known as a good person, fun to work with, approachable, can problem solve, can support a team, can work well as a team, that bit of advice resonates on so many different levels as being just generally a good person, but that's what's going to allow you to excel within the industry. So if we can embed that as a core part of what we're teaching and what we're putting together as a program, it will bear fruit. Tasty fruit.
Thanks, Jin. Laura, we'll come to yourself again. From a Pearson perspective then, around the resources and things that are actually available, is there any advice that you'd give to people that are either already delivering or that are thinking of delivering around what Pearson can actually support with?
Yeah, sure. So obviously the most important document that you need to have a sort of understanding of and keep by your side or in your computer is the specification, because the specification is what drives the everything really. And the other thing that I would we also have assignment briefs, the general package that we would offer, as well as the podcast. There's a roadshow that we did, which you can download or have a look at if you didn't make it. There's all of the training events that we do. But obviously do let me know if there's other training events that you want to have that aren't catered for, because we're always looking to support you in the way that you need. But one of the things that I would say, and this is coming from the senior standards verifier, now we're 2 years in, is BTEC is generally across the board, BTEC is designed for you to deliver it in the way that suits your learners' needs and your environment that you are in. So if you're needing to support progression into employment in an area that focuses on certain area, you choose those options accordingly, etc. But what I'm really getting at here is we are not dictating to you how you deliver your BTEC in esports and how you assess it. Your learners need to meet the assessment criteria that's outlined in the specification, but how you do that can be as innovative and creative as you like, and the more it is to suit your learners, the better, because that's what we want to see. And where people have fallen down in their first year in assessment is trying to understand or trying to think that we're telling you to do something in a certain way and we're not. And the benefit of being off measures is that we have that little bit of flexibility and no exams. So at this moment in time, there really is no restriction as to how you want to assess your students so long as they meet the criteria. And I think that's an important message, really.
Yes, it is absolutely, and I'll reiterate that on behalf of the Senior Standards Verifier, who, in the series of training events that we deliver for Pearson, really tries to get that message home that the standards verifiers are not there to catch you out, they're not there to trip you up. The assignment briefs that are provided on the Pearson website, they're an example, that they're not restrictive, you don't have to use those. And actually, we've spoken today so much about creativity, so this gives you a chance as educators to be creative, to create real-world assessments, to bring in external stakeholders and employers and scenarios within your local area. You can also combine units, as we've discussed. And to give a few examples, if you take the final learning outcome in Unit 4, which is health and wellbeing and fitness for esports players, it's very similar to the final outcome in nutrition and the final outcome in psychology. So why not do that as one client consultation and give them advice on their diet, their health, their well-being, and the psychological approach to esports? You can look at the cross-curricular nature of some of these units, and we might be creating an enterprise. Well, then let's create a brand as well, and let's cover the producing an esports brand unit. Let's do both units in one. You know, we might be then taking that a step further and saying, right, I've created a brand now in semester 1. In semester 2, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to launch that enterprise. And I'm going to use the launch an enterprise unit, and I'm going to use the business applications of social media unit to get students to actually run the thing. I could then link that to events. It could be an events enterprise, and we could get a load of stakeholders in, as Mark mentioned earlier, to actually run an event. And all of a sudden, over the course of a year, I've covered 5 units through one project. On that, again, please be creative, but what the other service that Pearson offer is they have an assignment checking service. It's ACS, which stands for Assignment Checking Service, at pearson.com. Very simple. Over the summer, get your thinking caps on, speak to your teams, be creative, combine units, create assessments, and send it in. And you won't get scrutinised, you'll get feedback and you'll get support. And that, again, is a real shift in the kind of support that we've had historically around education. And actually, we've got an opportunity to create something that's really unique in our centres. My top tip to finish off would be, you've seen lots of data already today, and you've seen lots of stats about the industry. Do exactly what you're doing. Arm yourself with that industry research and industry data. You either will be already, or you are about to become the esports expert in your centre. So you are going to be speaking to parents, to external stakeholders, to your senior leaders, and most importantly, to students. So make sure that you can articulate your programme, why you're delivering it. That comes back to your intent. What types of things they do on the course, make it fun, make it interesting, make it engaging, and then ultimately, one of the first questions that everybody, I'm sure, will always be asked by a parent is, well, then what can they do next? What's next? What are the careers? And it's just that journey. So that would be my advice. That will also, and I am absolutely of the stance that we don't do things for Ofsted. However, when the Ofsted inspector walks into your centre, you'll be prepared for that as well. Okay, so thank you very much. We're going to open up. We've got a couple of minutes left if anyone's got any questions for any of the panelists. And then following on from that, you're going to hear much more then about higher education in the panel that's hosted next by Tom. So we've got a few minutes for questions. If anyone's got any questions for Gina or Laura, thank you. We've got a few. I'll go yourself right there, if that's all right. Yeah, cheers, Elliot.
Question for Laura. How does the UK currently compare to the rest of Europe for esports education?
Well, in terms of Pearson, we have an international qualification that's available in Europe. I don't know this. I don't know the answer actually, but I think we're streaks ahead from what I gather from British Esports. But the answer to that question, I don't know fully. All I know is that we're in Holland, we're in Spain, and Turkey in terms of Pearson BTEC, but I'm not sure about other products, I'm afraid.
Yeah, just to add to that as well, absolutely, this is the first of its kind. You know, we're trailblazing in the United Kingdom, so we've got to be proud of that, and we've got to keep pushing that forward, and we've got to keep driving this and growing this to provide these opportunities as a sector leader globally, and that's what we are at the moment. Time for one more? Cheers, Mark.
Yeah, this will be short. I'm admissions time. For about 14 years of teaching, before I did the eSport, I used to tell my students, right, it's us against Pearson's. And you were the enemy, in a very sort of metaphorical way, and that we have to meet their criteria. We have to get it. And a previous conversation with you and starting eSport has completely turned me around on the whole of my way of thinking about that. So, and you really reinforced it today, so thank you very much for that. Sorry, not a question, but it has actually changed the way I've thought about Pearson's. It's not an exam board we have to meet their criteria for. So thank you very much for that.
Good, thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you.